Pepeha on the Wall, Week 2, 2025. The kids loved it, we celebrated it, and then went straight back to normal teaching. And I knew the moment it happened, something wasn't quite right. This was my first year teaching in a bilingual unit. I was one of two classes, minor mix across 3 year levels. We were a pilot program for the school, so there was no blueprint to follow, no one ahead of me who had done it before. Just us with our classroom of kids and a kaupapa that we believed in deeply. So week 1 was really get to know the kids, and Pepeha was one of the activities. And straight away I hit a wall. You see, some of the kids had done a Pepeha before, and most hadn't. And the ones who hadn't, they didn't know their maunga, they didn't know their awa, they didn't know their waka. And these weren't just gaps in knowledge, they were gaps in identity. So we did what you do. We filled in what we could, and we helped them find the words, and we put the Pepeha on the wall by week 2. And then we moved on, back to normal teaching. And that Pepeha sat on that wall untouched for quite some time. And I've been thinking about that moment ever since, because here's the question it left me with. And I still don't think schools have answered it properly. How do you honour a child's identity when they don't know it yet? And whose job is it to help them find it? About halfway through term 1, I started to see something clearly. Now, I was struggling not because the bilingual context was hard, though it was, and not because the kids were difficult, they weren't. I was struggling because I didn't have a system. I had the good intentions, the kaupapa that I believed in, and a timetable that had no room for any of it. And here's the thing I realised later, much later, that I want to say directly to any kaiako out there watching this. I wasn't struggling because I was in a bilingual unit. I was struggling because I was a teacher, and most teachers are in exactly the same place, whether they know it or not. You see, the Pepeha on the wall, that's not a bilingual unit problem. It's a mainstream problem. It's a system, educational system problem. That's what happens when cultural practice gets treated as a first week activity instead of a year-long commitment. So if this is landing, if any part of what I've just said is your classroom too, hit subscribe now. I'm going to share what this actually looks like as much as I can. So from term 2 onwards, I rebuilt everything. So the timetable came first. I wanted to show you this because I think teachers need to see what building it in actually looks like. And it's not just the philosophy, it's a decision you make about Monday morning, about what comes first, and about what gets time. So term 1, I built as ko waio, who am I? About atua, whakapapa, identity. Pepeha, but not as an activity, as a thread that runs through the whole term. Then term 2 was about migration, Māori arrival in Aotearoa, waka, navigation, the journey from Hawaii. The kids became the voyagers, and the whole term unfolded as a story. Term 3 was about settlement and adaptation, how Māori built a life here when they arrived in Aotearoa. We had a marae noho planned, but that didn't quite happen, so we did what teachers do. We brought the marae into the classroom through art, kiorahi, tikanga, purako, and the kids got just as much depth as they would from a marae. Term 4, ko au, ko mātou, ko tēnei ao, I, we, this world. So it was really about personal and collective identity, and this is where it got extraordinary. By term 4, we weren't just honouring Māori culture. I mean, my classroom was made up of Indian children, Pasifika, Pākehā, and for most of the year, I'd been focused on getting a te ao Māori right, that I hadn't stopped to ask, are we honouring all of them? And the answer was, honestly, no, not properly. So term 4 became the year's payoff. Personal migration stories, every child sharing their own whakapapa, their own whānau journey, their own identity. So we had a final celebration with whānau in the community, and all of it in the room together. And something that I'll always remember, of that year was one of our Indian students who had spent the year in our class learning te reo Māori in Pirako and tikanga, stood up and led our school assembly in te reo Māori. And not because we made him, but because he wanted to, and he could. So that's what happens when you stop treating culture as a subject and start treating it as the air in the room. When you honour one culture deeply, it opens the door for every culture. So understanding my own Māori whakapapa gives me a deeper respect for his. And he felt that, he knew that. Why? Because I could te reo in his language as well. That year is why Te Ata Global exists, because I looked around at the end of 2025 and I thought, what I just did took me a whole year to figure out. Trial and error, rebuilding the timetable, finding the right protocol, working out how to hold identity at the centre when everything else is pulling you toward the standard program. But what if a teacher didn't have to figure all of that out alone? So that's Kōrero and Create. It's a tool built for exactly the kaiako I was at the start of that year. Someone who cares deeply about doing this right, but doesn't have the system to hold it together. So it gives you the planning architecture, the culturally grounded unit structure, the resources that actually live inside the kaupapa, not alongside it. So it's not a curriculum replacement. It's the thing that makes culturally responsive teaching sustainable, week after week, term after term. If any part of what I've shared today sounds familiar, if you've got Pepeha on your wall that you haven't touched in a long time, I want you to know it's not a failure. That's a starting point. So the free core edition of Kōrero and Create is live now at teataglobal.com. Start there. And if this resonated, subscribe. More of these as often as I can, because I am still a working kaiako with real classroom stories, not theory. And if you're on this journey, whether you're a new kaiako, an experienced teacher trying to do better, or someone building cultural practice into a school or even a workplace that's never done it before, I'd love to hear your story. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.